Parnell joins. He's a combat veteran, New York Times bestselling author of Outlaw Platoon. He also hosts Battleground Live on the Clay and Buck Podcast Network. He's a fantastic host. Check out that show. Subscribe to the Clay and Buck Podcast Network, and then listen to the Sean Parnell Show. Sean, great to have you, my friend. Good to talk to you again, as always. Big item today, Sean, that I think you could really shed some light on. There's a lot of criticism, and it's coming to me as well as a lot of other people, but coming to me from veterans specifically who are saying, this guy Walz wants to tell us all that, he served and we should all kind of bow down to his veteran status and it's all great and it's amazing. But when it came time after many years being a sergeant major to go to Iraq, he chose not to go. Can you break this down for us as somebody who was over there, was in combat, and served his country at that level? What do you make of what we know about Governor Walz and his service at this point?
Buck, it's cowardice, plain and simple. And let me give you a sense of how 18-year-old privates, which, by the way, very, very different from a command sergeant major. A command sergeant major is the highest enlisted rank in the United States military. Command sergeants major are the heart and soul of any unit. They're the door kickers. They teach, they coach, they mentor, they train units. And Walz probably had 800 plus soldiers at a minimum beneath him. But my soldiers, my privates in combat, and again, I was in combat for 485 days in Afghanistan, led an infantry platoon at the height of the hunt for bin Laden. I watched my soldiers do extraordinary things in combat because they were afraid of letting each other down. I watched my medic, his name is Doc Pantoja, get shot in the face and then treat 12 casualties without ever once taking care of himself, 3 of which would have died without his help. I watched a kid in my platoon named Canton Wind gets shot in the head. He was evac to Germany, developed a blood clot. When the docs tried to send him home, he said, no, keep me here in Germany because when I heal up, I want to get back to my soldiers. All of that, Buck, was because they didn't want to let their brothers down next to them in the trenches. And keep in mind, the job that most of these kids had before joining the United States military was high school shortstop. And so everything that we do in the military is geared towards not letting your brothers and sisters down. And that obligation is far greater if you're a leader, whether you're a non-commissioned officer, an enlisted leader in the United States military, or an officer. When I was in Ranger School, like probably the most difficult school that the United States, leadership school that the Army has to offer, it was constantly about starving you, keeping you awake, marching 20 miles a day, putting you in very, very high pressure leadership situations where they turn to you and say, make a decision, make a decision, Ranger, lead. What are you going to do? And I'll never forget in combat, trapped in a kill zone with my radio telephone operator looking at me, these big, bright blue eyes. And he's, we got surrounded, outmanned, outgunned, shooting at us from all different directions. He's looking at me and reverberating on my mind, or make a decision, lead, right? And so Walz has an obligation as a command sergeant major, the senior enlisted member in his battalion, in his unit, to when they get orders to go to combat, to go to Iraq, it's his job to lead. It's his job to lead from the front. To set the example, run to the sound of gunfire, not away. But in those critical moments when all of his soldiers, 800 plus at a minimum, by the way, Buck, 800 plus looking at him, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and probably a little bit afraid that they're going into the fray, he tucked tails and he runs at that critical moment? It basically says to these kids who are going into Iraq and don't know whether or not they're going to come home alive, hey, good luck. Hope you survive. I'm out of here. I'm retiring. It's just gutting, Buck. It's hard to describe the level of cowardice that it takes for a leader in the United States military, especially one that served for 24 years. They trot out this 24 years thing like it's something about, look how long he served. He should know better after 2 years. 24 years, it's just dereliction of duty of the highest order.
Sean, Buck and I talked about this because I saw you tweeting about it as soon as this story started. And I said, I want to bring on Sean because I don't even feel that comfortable analyzing it because, frankly, I never served. So a lot of people, I think, out there hear, 24 years, and they automatically think, hey, this is a valorous guy. But I think your perspective is so important. How many people do you think that have served in combat zones, when they hear this about Tim Walz, have the exact same reaction that you do? In other words, how commonplace do you think your opinion is among those who have actually put their lives on the line overseas or elsewhere?
Everyone, Clay, every single person that served overseas probably looks at this decision with disdain, because the reality is that when you get orders to go to combat, to go to war, regardless of where it is, you sacrifice a lot to do that. And you sacrifice time with your family. If you have kids, you sacrifice time with your children. The truth is, nobody wants to go, but you saddle up and you go anyway because it's your duty, and you have a duty and an obligation to the man and woman in the trenches next to you. And if you're a leader, that obligation is even greater, because you have an obligation to lead from the front, to go to where the fire is heaviest, right? To where you can have the biggest impact on the battlefield. And not only that, that every decision that you make could forever alter the trajectory of your soldiers. And God forbid, if you make a bad one of them goes home in a body bag. And by the way, what I'm talking about is I'm not the exception to this. I'm the rule. This is the situation that America's sons and daughters find themselves in, whether they're an enlisted leader or an officer, when they raise their right hand and volunteer to serve in the military, Clay. So anyone that has shouldered that awesome responsibility of leading America's sons and daughters, yet nobody wants to go to combat, but you saddle up and you go anyway because it's your duty. And for him to tuck tail and run, and then try to make the case that he should be the vice president of the United States, a heartbeat away from the presidency, while simultaneously calling Donald Trump and J.D. Vance weird, it's just beyond comprehension.
Sean, really appreciate that perspective. We needed to hear that a lot. We have so many veterans, we have so many active duty that listen to this show, and so to bring in somebody who has really been out there and understands these decisions, I think it's just necessary perspective. I also want to bring in your perspective as a native son of Pennsylvania, a Pittsburgh area guy who has run for Congress and knows the political battlefield. Not you're talking about the battlefield of Afghanistan, Iraq before, but now in the political battlefield, quite a bit different. They didn't go with the governor of your state, Shapiro. How do you now assess Trump v. Kamala in Pennsylvania?
Well, first of all, let me just say, as someone who's run for office twice in Pennsylvania, I got to tell you, Clay, Buck, I'm very glad that they did not pick Josh Shapiro, because Josh Shapiro fakes a good game. He fakes being a moderate. And of course, we all understand there's no such thing as a moderate Democrat, but he's in the most important swing state in the nation. I contend that Pennsylvania is the swing state, because if you win Pennsylvania, Democrat or Republican, it's far more likely that you win Michigan. It's far more likely that you win Wisconsin. And so to not pick Josh Shapiro because of the pro-Hamas base of their party, when Shapiro has 60% favorability and just won an election here in Pennsylvania just a couple of years ago, I'm telling you, it's a mind-blowingly stupid decision, because vice presidential candidates, while they don't always carry their home state in a presidential cycle, oftentimes, and this is empirically validated over time, they're good for a 1.8% bump in their home state. And guess what? 1.8% in Pennsylvania could make all the difference. So I am glad that Kamala picked Walz, because right now, between Harris and Walz, we have what I believe to be the most radical top of the ticket in the history of our country. And I don't think that's hyperbole. And that's not going to play well in Pennsylvania, where you have over 1.2 million independents that are trying to assess where they want to go with their lives. And I think when they go into that election booth, Clay, Buck, and they pull that lever, it's going to be a very simple calculation for them. What life was like under Trump, food, gas, affordable, 401k going up, and what life is like under Biden, and who Kamala Harris is connected to. Life is a heck of a lot harder now. And when you're trying to make the case to independents, blue staters like somebody from Minnesota like Walz, somebody from California like Harris, they struggle mightily to talk to those centrists that are critically important to win. So I think it bodes well for Trump and JD in Pennsylvania that they've got this crazy radical Walz on the ticket.
Okay, you're a Pittsburgh guy. I got an important question for you to close out everything. You covered what you deemed to be Tim Walz's cowardice. You just broke down how Pennsylvania is going to go in the election. This is the question that people in Pittsburgh care about the most. Who's going to be the quarterback this year, and how's he going to do?
I'll tell you what, Russell Wilson hurting his calf. I mean, there's always a quarterback controversy in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. But I would tell you this, like, I would be remiss to weigh in on that topic now because who knows?
I love by the way, hold on. This is amazing. You'll give an opinion on Tim Walz's service record, on Kamala Harris's choice of vice president, not even blink, just fire full speed. I ask you to break down the Steelers quarterback situation. You are a diehard Steelers fan, and you're like, I don't know that I can weigh in on. This is amazing.
I don't listen. Pittsburgh, look,
you served in combat 450 days, taking bullets for people trying to kill you for over a year, and you won't tell me who the quarterback's going to be.
Look, Steelers fans are vicious, okay? They're passionate. They're the best traveling fans in football. I'll tell you this, Justin Fields throwing dimes in training camp. I've been watching, very optimistic about that. He's got some longevity. He's got legs underneath him, which is good for the Pittsburgh offense. But hey, Russell Wilson, veteran quarterback, is good under pressure in those critical moments, especially if you make it to the playoffs. And I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that the Steelers make it to the playoffs. And so, we'll see where the cards fall.
I love this. But I think, definitive answers on the most pressing questions in the world. Put him on the spot for who's going to be Steelers quarterback, and he gets right on the fence, Buck. Sits right on the fence.
Something. This is amazing.
The
Accounting network trying to ambush him for 18 months. Like, yeah, no big deal. But what's the depth chart of the Pittsburgh Steelers? Clay. I don't want to get myself into too much stress and trouble here. So,
by the way, Sean, as we go to break, I told Buck we got to meet in person at the event we just did last week. You and your wife, fantastic. We're happy to have you as a part of the podcast network. Despite your cowardice on picking a Steelers quarterback, I would encourage everybody out there to go listen to Sean Parnell's podcast. I guarantee you're going to love it, and we appreciate the time today.
Thanks, Clay. Thanks, Buck. Take care, guys.
Yeah, great to see you, man.
That is fabulous, Buck. There you go. Guys, fearless, answering every question under the sun. You ask him who the quarterback of his favorite team's going to be, and he turns tail. It's a story as old as time. Let me tell you, the Israeli Defense Forces on high alert, bracing for an attack any moment. I was going to be in Israel, and so they canceled our flights because they were concerned about when Iran was going to attack, when Hezbollah was going to attack. And that is going on every minute as we speak. At any moment in time, an attack may be coming from Israel's enemies. In the event of that attack, they're going to be forcing almost everyone into bomb shelters. The shelters keep Israelis safe, but they also need to be equipped with essentials, including food, water, to prepare people to live in them for extended periods of time. This is where the International Federation of Christians and Jews comes in. The fellowship has launched a project to immediately equip bomb shelters with emergency food boxes for Israelis who have to remain there in case of attack. 10,000 of these food boxes have been delivered, and they're preparing to deliver thousands more. If you can support the Federation's efforts, now is the time. Donate $45 to help provide an emergency food box that includes items like food, water, baby formula, and other critical essentials for vulnerable Israelis trapped in bomb shelters. Website is this, supportifcj.org. That's supportifcj.org.